Hello, and welcome to the second video of our four-part series on the new Mission Control component for Security Center. In this video series, we'll take an in-depth look at what Mission Control can do, how to install and configure the software, different configuration options we can use for incidents, and how operators would be using Mission Control for monitoring and reporting. In our first video, we took a look at what Mission Control is from a high-level concept perspective, and took an in-depth look at a few examples showing how Mission Control can be used in the Security Operations Center. This video will cover the installation of the software, the configuration of the Incident Manager role, and we'll start looking into basic incident creation. In later videos, we'll talk about setting up more advanced features that we can use for incidents, such as triggers and workflows, and finally look at incident monitoring from an operator's perspective and how we can get more information from the reporting task. Mission Control installation. Before installing Mission Control, there's a few prerequisites that we'll need to take a look at. First of all, you'll have to be running Security Center 5.5 Enterprise Edition. We recommend having Plan Manager Advanced installed as well. And the server should meet the high server specifications as outlined in the Security Center 5.5 release notes. For the actual startup of the installation of Mission Control, we need to make sure that we install Security Center prior to Mission Control, and the installation must be run on all servers and clients. Simply run the setup.exe from the installation folder. After running the setup.exe, the installation wizard will come up, and it's fairly straightforward from here. First, we just need to accept the license agreement, and then click on Install. Once it is finished, you're going to need to restart the Genetec server service if you're installing this on a server. Click Finish to complete the installation, and restart the Genetec server service if you have that option checked. After the installation has completed, you should see your new Incident Manager role in the System task, the new Incident Configuration task in the Config tool, and the Incident Monitoring and the Incident Report task in the Security desk. Taking a look at your user privileges, you should see new ones for Mission Control, such as the ability to trigger an incident, the ability to forcefully resolve an incident, and more. Incident Manager role configuration. Now that we have Mission Control installed, let's take a look at how we can configure the Incident Manager role. We'll need to open our System task and go into our Roles view on top. Click on the Incident Manager on the left. There's not much to see from the identity, so let's jump into the properties here. Looking at our basic properties, the first thing we can see is our retention period. This is how long Mission Control will keep the closed incidents. By default, it's set for 90 days. The Enforce Incident Ownership option here will make sure that whoever is handling an incident must take ownership of it first. Below this is our list of priorities. We have our default ones of low, medium, high, and critical, but if needed, we can add an additional priority to use within Mission Control. For example, we could add a VIP priority, which could be used in a case where the actual priority of the incident isn't very high, but it's a very public incident, so you still want people to get on top of it right away. Once we click OK, it's going to be added to our list, and then we can click on it and move it up in the list until we have it about where we want it to be in terms of the overall priority. Looking at the advanced settings, we have a few other things here, including the options for our RabbitMQ service. Most of the Mission Control communication goes through the RabbitMQ service, and we can also have failover servers set up for the RabbitMQ service here. If you already have RabbitMQ installed, but you're using a different username and password than the default, you can enter them here. If you want to add additional servers for failover purposes for RabbitMQ, just click on the plus sign here, and it's going to prompt you for the new IP address of the server and a different port if it's required. Under Document Management, the port here is what's used to transfer all the information, and the document location is the folder on the server that's going to keep the actual documents. If you're actually using the config tool on the server itself, you can use the browse option here. Otherwise, type in the folder path yourself as it refers to on the server. While we're managing documents in Mission Control, if we delete a document, it's never hard deleted and it's pushed into a trash folder. If you want to delete something permanently, you can open the document trash folder from here and you can delete the file from there. If we're not on the server or the folder itself is empty, then this button here will be grayed out. We're going to take a look at roll failover in a minute, but one thing to bear in mind is that if you're going to set that up, you need to make sure that this document location is set on a server that's accessible by all the servers, and it should be a shared folder. Let's move on to our States tab. States indicate the status of an incident while we're using it in Mission Control. The ones listed here are the defaults, and we have the state itself, we have the users who are allowed to use it, and we have the accepted incoming states. These are basically the list of states that an incident can be in order to change it into the state that we have indicated on the side here. So for this example, we can change an incident into a solved state if it's already in progress or if it's parked. We can't change it to a solved state if the incident is in the new state, as it's not included in the list here. You'll note that we don't have the closed state in any of these lists, and you can't include it if you have your own custom states, because nothing can be done after an incident is closed. Let's take a look at how to add a custom state. Just click on the Add an Item button down here, and the first thing we're going to need to do is give the state a name. Let's say in our example we have an incident, and in the procedures list, the operator has to go through up to a certain point, and then they need to get approval from a supervisor. We don't want the incident to sit there in progress because it's not really doing anything at that point, so we're going to make a custom state for that, and then they can put the incident into that state until they actually are able to proceed forward. So we're going to call the state name Supervisor Pending. And under the allowed users, if we leave it blank, it's going to apply to everyone like we see in our defaults here. Or we can click on the plus sign here and we can restrict it to a certain number of user groups, or restrict it to specific users. In our example, if somebody tried to change the state on the incident, it wouldn't show up as a valid state unless it was one of these three users. Under the accepted incoming states, this is where we can choose what state an incident can be in order to use this new state. We can choose any state, or we can choose a specific group of states. Now in our example, we wouldn't want an operator to run to the supervisor if the incident is new, or if it's solved, because that would sort of be a waste of time, so we only want to use the in progress and the parked states. Click on Save, and we're going to see our new incident state in the list. If we want to edit a state, we can just click on it from here, and click on the pencil button on the bottom here. If it's one of our defaults, we can't change the state name, but we can change the accepted incoming states. So in our example, if we have the state of the incident in Supervisor Pending, and then the operator gets the approval from the supervisor, we want to be able to go to a solved state from there. So then we can simply go here and click on our custom state to include it in our solved state. Hit Saved, and we see the new accepted incoming state from here. Any custom states that have been created can also be deleted by clicking on them and clicking on the X on the bottom. Once again, our defaults cannot be deleted. Let's take a look in the Resources tab for a minute. This is very similar to other roles where we have our database that we are using, and we also have the servers in use. So we can add other servers here if we want to actually set up role failover. And of course, we can also go into the advanced configuration to pick the network card. We get our standard warning here, which is a very good idea, that we need to make sure that the database is actually on a shared computer, so there's no interruptions and no loss of information when the role fails over. Now that's everything we need to do to actually install Mission Control and set up the Incident Manager role, so now we're going to move on to looking at creating some actual incidents. Basic incident creation in Mission Control. From our config tool, we have our new incident configuration task. There's two main management sections from the incident configuration task. The section where we actually create the incident types, and we also have our document management here. All the incidents you already have created will be listed in the incident configuration on the left here, but we can also group these if we start getting into more and more different incident types. So going down to the bottom, what we can actually do is click on the arrow here, and we can create an incident category. So this is a folder we can use to actually sort and manage our different incident types. So in this case, I'm going to add one called Facilities. And I'm going to add a second one here. And I'm going to call that Public. I'm going to use the Facilities category to put any of the incident types that relate to any kind of building or physical property incident that comes up. So we have our denied enforced, our door forced, and our glass break ones here. So let's put that under Facilities. And under Public, we're going to put our lost child and our suspicious activity as they relate more to people. So as you can see, it's just like the area view where you can actually click on the incident type and you can drag and drop it into the different incident categories if you need to. If you need to remove an incident from a category and just want to put it in the root, just click on it and drag it below and it will pop back out of the folder here. Now before we go into actually creating our own incidents, I just want to point something out real quick. If we have an incident that we're working on, and we're using things like triggers or workflows or things that might affect other entities on the system, what we want to do as a best practice is actually deactivate the incident while we're working on it. It will turn red in the list to indicate that it is deactivated, and once we've got everything set up that we need, we can go ahead and activate it again. This is particularly important when we're setting up the triggers and where various events in the Security Center system can cause the incident to be triggered. So let's look at actually creating a basic incident. I'm going to put this under my Facilities category right here, so I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to click on the Add an Incident button on the bottom. So the first thing we need to do is give the incident a name. We're going to use bomb threat for this example. We can enter a description in here if we want to, but I think the name is pretty self-explanatory. And then what we need to do is give the incident an icon that very clearly represents what it is on the map. Now by default we've got the lightning bolt one here, but we can add custom ones like I've done here. Now none of the ones we have here really represents a bomb threat, so I'm going to click on the Add button, and I'm going to browse to a new icon. Now we have our new icon here and we have it selected. Next to the Add button, we have an image representing what the pin will actually look like on the map for this particular incident. So the bomb icon looks great, but I'm not so sure about the red color. So what we can do from here is change the actual color of the pin. This doesn't change the color of the columns for the actual incident. We can show how we're going to do that in the next video, which is on workflows. So choosing the drop-down, we can either enter a color code right here, or we can pick one of the presets, or use a custom one as well. Since we have a dark icon with a dark red in it, I want to use something a little bit lighter, so I'm going to go with a yellow here. Now that icon really stands out and that pin will show up very well on our map. Let's take a look at our incident properties. The recipients is the list of users who will actually have this incident show up in their incident monitoring task. By default it's set to everyone, but we can actually choose specific people for this. Now there's two ways to choose specific recipients. By default we're in the basic way here, but we can also choose the advanced method. Now as another best practice, we should decide which one we want to use ahead of time. If we switch back and forth between the basic and the advanced, it's going to wipe out the list every time. So under the basic recipients, we can just click on the plus sign here, and we can choose who we want to receive this. So I'm going to choose our 3 people here that I like. I'm going to hit add, and we can see them on the list here. If we need to remove somebody, we can, that's not a problem. And we can add others if we need to as well. Let's switch over and look at the advanced specific recipients. And it will give you the notification that it will clear the list. So let's add some specific recipients here. Now when we're adding advanced recipients, we need to take into account 3 things. The area is the location, so basically where the incident is originating from. So if we click on the plus sign here, and we pick the Airport Terminal 3, and click on Add, then the only time that a recipient will receive the incident is if it actually happens within the Airport Terminal 3 area. Under the schedule, we need to choose the time frame of when the incident can be active. So we click plus here, and we choose business hours and hit add. Then the only time this incident can be created is during business hours. And finally, the recipients are our users like we saw before. And again, I can pick specific people, or I can pick a user group as well. Once we have those 3 things specified, we can hit OK, and that's going to be added to our recipients list. Now if the incident meets the schedule and it meets the proper location, but none of these recipients is logged on, we don't want the incident to go unnoticed, so we can actually add somebody in here in the If No One Answers list. Click on the plus here, and we can choose our administrators to fall back to. Let's take a look at a few of the other properties here. So of course play a sound is pretty obvious. We've got some default ones in here that we can use, and once you select one you can actually test it. The priority is what we set up before, so we can see our new VIP priority is in there. Of course this is a bomb threat, so we do want to keep this at a critical priority. In the role we set up the retention period for the closed incidents, but we can also have independent retention periods for the incident itself. And if we do have any cameras associated with this incident, we can choose what kind of video to play back, either live video, playback video, or a combination of the two. We can also specify how long before the incident that we want to play video from. Hit apply and we'll see that it updates the incident on the side here. Now we're going to go over the triggers in the workflow in the next video, so let's jump to the procedure. So this is where we actually define the steps that we want the operator to go through. This is basically our standard operating procedures. The nice thing about Mission Control, as opposed to just having a paper sheet with the procedures listed on it, is we can actually prompt the operator for more information, or we can give them a document to look at, and we can choose to allow or disallow them from skipping steps, and we can choose to force them to do the steps in a specific order. So to add a procedure step for this particular incident, just click on the Add an Item button on the bottom here, And then we want to give the step name, which is basically the procedure. Now, of course, the first thing we'd want to do in a bomb threat is evacuate the area. So we're going to add that as our first step. Now, to help the operator out, there's two things we can do. We can either give them a URL of a website to go to, or we can choose to give them a list of documents to refer to. We're going to take a look at the document management in a second, but basically what we do is we add documents and we tag them. We can have multiple documents tagged with the same identifier, so what we would do is just choose tag here, and choose that identifier from the drop-down list. The force comment checkbox is if we want the operator to actually enter some information. So let's hit OK on this step, and then we're going to add another step, and this is going to be contact SWAT team. While we're contacting the SWAT team, we could also want an ETA, so we could write give ETA in the step name, and we could force a comment here. So that way, when the person actually tries to check this procedure, it's going to come up with a pop-up box, and they're going to have to put in an ETA of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the SWAT team actually gave them. Now we can see in our list that we actually have the force comment checked in this particular step. Now we'll just add one more step to this procedure. Which is to evacuate the Security Operations Center. We can of course add several other steps if we need to. If you want to as well, you can reorder them. We can select it from the list, and we can bump it up or down to whatever step number we want. In this case, we also want to force the sequential validation, so we want the operators to stay calm and go through each one of these steps one at a time and make sure that the situation is properly addressed. Let's hit apply here, and then we've got everything set up that we need to for the procedure. Now the last thing I want to show you is under the document management. So from here we can keep adding other documents that we think might be useful for the actual operators. Let's add a new document to see how this works. Click on the Add an Item button on the bottom here. And the first thing we have to determine is if we're getting it from a file or if it's from a URL. So for a file, if we click on the folder button right here, it's going to open up a dialog box on our local machine. From here we can choose the file and then hit open. We can change the name if we want to here. We can give it a description. And the tag is how we can identify it. So we can either choose one of the existing tags that's already there, or we can type a new one from here. The fields below is where we can limit what type of incident this document can belong to. So we can say that we only want this to be part of our bomb threat, or we can add other incidents to the incident type. So we can say that we want to use this one during our glass break incident as well. We can also add a schedule here. So this one will only come up if it's during the night schedule. The location is the area that the incident must be happening in. So we're going to pick Airport Terminal 3. And then again, we can choose a specific user that this will show up for. So I'm going to choose myself. So in this case, if I'm logged in and we get a bomb threat incident during the night schedule and it happens to be in the area called Airport Terminal 3, I will see this document available to me to view. Now, of course, if we get a whole bunch of different documents and if we have a lot of incidents, we could have a lot of different documents to go with them. This list could get rather long, so we actually do have a filter up top that we can use. So click on the filter and we can choose them based on the type of incident, the last time it was modified, the location it's applicable to, the schedule, and of course the users and user groups. So if I want to see the ones that are available on the always schedule, I can hit that, hit apply, and it limits my list to the ones that have that particular criteria. If we want to get all the documents back, we just need to click the clear button on the bottom here. Now that's everything we need to know to actually create the incident type in the config tool. So now when I'm in my security desk and I'm in my incident monitoring task, I can right-click on my map, I can choose trigger an incident, and under my facilities, I have my new bomb threat incident. Once we click on trigger, it'll show up on the map. And note the pin color and the icon that we configured originally in the incident properties. Giving the incident pins different colors and different icons makes it very easy to differentiate them on the map. If we take ownership of this incident, the current properties of this incident type will stay in place even if somebody is modifying them. The new properties of the incident type will take effect the next time the incident is triggered. This concludes Part 2 of our Mission Control training series. Please take a look for Part 3, where we take a look at the advanced features that we can set up for an incident, such as triggers and workflows. Thank you for watching.